People pleasing, fawning, some of the dynamics around that. And what does that have to do with connection? Are we fawning, people pleasing, or are we having a connection with somebody? We're looking at some of the subtle dynamics of that. Fawning is this fear-based reactive strategy. It's a way to keep ourselves in connection. As we're doing these practices, it's a way to not just pay attention to, well, right now, as I'm thinking about that relationship or thinking about that interaction, what's going on inside? What's going on underneath? Why am I acting the way I am? And always when we're doing this, it's helpful to bring ourselves into awareness of this is what my nervous system's doing. This is what my adult self or my wisdom, my mind is doing. These are the thoughts in my mind. We're always really looking at how can I be present? How can I notice this is what's going on? And then use that information then to be more effective in our daily life. So one of the things about people pleasing and fawning is that it involves submission to somebody else. We submit. So we're not on an equal basis. And it can look like the same thing no matter what's going on inside of us. We might be feeling really humiliated, angry, scared. Fawning, people pleasing is a survival mechanism. It's a response when we feel threat. So one of the answers to that, of course, is to always come back into regulating our nervous system. We don't want to have a connection through fawning or people pleasing because it feels humiliating in some ways for us to fawn to somebody else. There's a lot of shame attached to that. As we're going through this, we're just really working with the deep nervous system response that involves people pleasing. There's some signs that we're a people pleaser. We avoid confrontation. We apologize all the time. We're always seeking validation. We're happy when someone else is happy. So there's a lot of nuances here that these are also signs of other things as well. If we're making a repair with somebody, which we worked with last week, that's rooted in secure attachment and emotional regulation. We have some confidence that we can be present in our adult self, that we can negotiate what we need, that we can apologize if we've made a mistake, or if we've said something that was hurtful. Maybe we were in a fight response and we said something and now we're like, okay, that's not who I want to be in relationship, so I'm going to make a repair. I'm going to make a bid for connection. But we can't do that if we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When we heal, we need to be coming back into this repatterning, this emotional regulation, so that we can negotiate instead of submitting to make the problem go away or to try and have a connection with somebody. So this has a relationship with being bullied. It certainly has a big relationship with our history. Were we allowed to express ourselves, to have needs that were different than our caretakers or our parents' needs? A lot of underground to this. When our nervous system as a child especially has learned that we will be the safest if we suppress our own truth, then that's what we bring into our adult life. Instead of having the confidence, and I mean confidence in a very deep way, instead of having the confidence to say, this is how I feel about this, or these are my thoughts on this, we submit, or sometimes in more extreme cases, we're compliant with something that we know is wrong. We don't want to do it. We don't have the nervous system regulation or the social power or financial power to speak up and be who we are. So we kind of throw ourselves under the bus. And it's a very harming pattern, especially when it gets to be the extreme, or if it's a pattern that's happening a lot in your relationship. Sometimes it'll happen in one certain segment of your life, like if you have a boss who's a bully or something like that, but it can also show up in less intense and more intense ways in a lot of different arenas. So we can't get to anything like a real connection because one person in this relationship has more power than the other. The person with less power is appeasing in order to avoid conflict. When we repair and we say, I'm sorry I said that, I know I hurt your feelings, however we might repair, we have to have a certain level of confidence to even attempt something like that. We have to be regulated, our nervous system, which we work so much on. What's happening in my nervous system? How can I be steady enough here? The thing about social interactions is that they happen quite quickly. Often it's later when we go, whoa, I'm walking out of that situation with a feeling of, ugh, what happened there? One of the things we could also do when we're working with fawning is to give ourselves some compassion and patience and kindness of this is going on. There was a dynamic there that I'm not happy with. I can check into that now. And so part of what we're doing with these inquiries is we're doing that kind of work. This is a relationship there's something about that I don't like. And what's the dynamic and how can I make a change there? I don't have to appease people in order to be safe. Well, that may feel more or less true in some situations than in others. So when we're fawning or people pleasing, it keeps us in a kind of a collapsed state. We're anxious. We're not really showing up as our true, authentic self because it doesn't feel safe enough. We're still oriented to reducing threat. Our heart, our compassion, self compassion, compassion for others, connection is not available to us when we're in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. We have to come into that before we can actually make a repair or actually want to connect with someone else. We have to come back into this navigation of this is your view, this is my view, or this is your need, this is my need. I want to go for Mexican food, you want to go for Chinese food, whatever it is. How can we negotiate that? Or one person's really activated and really angry about something, and the other person is kind of feeling through with listening to ranting. How can we negotiate that? If we're people pleasing, we're probably just going to let it happen. We're just going to let that person rant and rant and rant. And we might feel a lot underneath that. We might be angry, we might be impatient, we might be whatever. But we're not able to say, let's pause here. I'm feeling uncomfortable with this. Let's talk about what's going on. Or I know that you're really upset about this right now, and I appreciate that you need a way to release your anger, but I'm not feeling comfortable with that being me. Let's talk about how we might do this. So those kinds of conversations can't happen if we're not feeling safe enough in the relationship to speak up. We fawn, it's a power imbalance, and it really feels shaming. It feels humiliating. And even when we think back, there's a feeling of, what was the matter with me that I just let that go on and on and on? I just kept placating that person, or I just kept never expressing what I needed in order to make the relationship continue. Sometimes there's a perfectionist thing going on. For whatever reason, if we're in freeze, for instance, we're not very likely to be able to speak up and say what's true for us. And when that's the case, then we often get into this appeasing behavior of, I don't like what's going on here. I don't really feel like good outcome will happen if I speak up and say something. Just suck it up. It's also hard to watch other people doing that as well. There's a humiliation, a shame, and a built into appeasing somebody. One of the dynamics of this that I think is so important for us to work with is that this is a survival response. It's generated by the nervous system. We do it with people who have more power over us. We do it at work if it's financial power. We do it in relationships. We do it with social power. This isn't something that's wrong with us. This is a response that's harmful. And we can work with this and go, okay, I see that's my response. I have so much compassion for myself that that's been what felt possible for me. Now I'm going to do something about that. So let's go into some inquiry now. Notice how you're feeling now. Take a few breaths and look around the room and orient to the present moment. This is a powerful thing. So it might be that you jot down a few things that you want to continue to work with. There's a lot of ways that we can work with this. Two things. One is, I know that I'm safe here in this moment. So we look around, we see that. Our nervous system realizes that, and we offer ourselves some kindness. Especially if we're the one who has been fawning, we need to really be kind with ourselves and strengthen ourselves. Shaming ourselves diminishes us. Honoring the truth of what's going on helps us to be stronger. What's the situation in your body? And then take a few breaths. If you notice that you're kind of hunkered up or bracing yourself, see if you could let your body soften a little. We're intentionally looking to see, what is the threat? Think about a person, a relationship. Bring to mind something that has enough of a juice that you can do some work with it. What is your actual threat in that relationship now? Might not be that you're still in relationship with that person. This might be something from the past that you were able to get out of somehow. It might be that it's still a factor. Those would be two of the dynamics that it could be. What's the feeling in your body as you think about that person? And what are the power dynamics? If you were to just explain to somebody, this is my boss, they are not very well organized. And when they run into a deadline, they really lash out at people. And when they do that, I kind of hustle around and try to make it better for them. Or, this is my sibling, or they're always kind of contemptuous of me. And I don't feel like it's safe for me to really speak up or confront them. There's nothing about who they are and my relationship with them that makes me feel like that would be a good thing. I just try to ignore them, and when I don't, I try to people please. I don't feel like it's going to be positive to confront them. Let's take a couple of minutes here. Who are you thinking about? What are the power dynamics in that relationship? And what is your perception of the best way to negotiate in that relationship? It's a place where you're people pleasing. That has been your nervous system's assessment that the best way to get through this is to just people please. Remember your breath. Notice the feelings, sensations in your body. Now that we've kind of touched into that for a moment, bring to mind now some examples of relationships where that dynamic is not present. What's going on in a relationship where there's no people pleasing, nobody's fawning to the other? It feels like you have more safety to be who you are. So let's just touch into that as well to remind ourselves we have relationships that are like that as well. And notice how that feels in your body. What are the power dynamics there? If there was some kind of a sick sensation in your stomach before, when you're thinking about the relationship where you have fawned to someone, what does it feel like when you think about or bring to mind that more equal relationship where you can really just relax and be who you are? So it's important for us to recognize that we're not the same in every situation and that there's power dynamics at play here that cause some of this. Let's go back to the fawning situation. Stay present in this moment. Remember that you're here. Keep your eyes open. Hold your hands. Take some breaths. Aware that you're in a situation where you're looking at something, but you're not in the actual interaction at the moment. This is sometimes where ruminating comes into, where we go over something in the past that we really wish was different. Something that feels unjust or unfinished. And bring up something really specific if you can. Something where you threw yourself under the bus, maybe. Maybe you tried to stand up for yourself and you just had this attack. Something's going on, and let yourself experience that for a moment. Notice it in your body. And what are you telling yourself about that experience? So, is the inner critic engaged here? Oftentimes, we're really beating ourselves up. This is a situation where we're not comfortable with the power dynamic in a relationship, and we don't feel like we can be who we are. We feel some pressure to accommodate the other person, to make them feel like we really admire them, perhaps, even if we don't. Because if they feel like that, they will be placated. Their level of anger at us might go down. Maybe they'll bring us in. We'll feel like we're part of that, so we're not a threat to them. We pay a price. There's been some pretty interesting studies done around people who are violent, either through words or through physical. They are violent with certain people, and somehow they're able to control that when they're with other people. So, for instance, if you tend to go into a rage and be very critical with somebody, do you do that across the board? Do you do that with your boss? Do you do that if you're in a situation of someone's with authority with you? Or is that a pattern that somehow you're able to stop? Do you placate with everybody? Do you people please with everybody? There's a lot going on here, complex, nuanced situations, as well as the very simple principle of in order for me to feel safe, I need to make this person not see me as a threat. And one of the ways we do that is we flatter them, we people please. That's just the situation. If we have something like that going on in our life, then we use the tools, the strategies we have in order to keep ourselves safe. It might not feel right. It might be something that we have a lot of turmoil about inside. Sometimes we can do something about it immediately, sometimes we can't. So, what we can always do is offer ourselves some respect. Here's the situation. It's difficult. I don't like the situation. And at least in the short term, I'm trying to keep the peace so that I can be safe. So, could we at least start there? There's nothing wrong with us that we fawn or people please to keep ourselves safe. That's a dynamic that's very common in our culture, in our families, in our communities. We people please to keep ourselves safe. What about this relationship do you feel like you could make a change with? So, is this a relationship where you're accurately assessing this, or is there something you could do? So, maybe there's a situation where you could speak up and say, I'm uncomfortable with the amount of time that we spend with you yelling about things you're upset about. I feel like I disappear in the situation. Like you could be yelling, ranting to anybody, discharging that energy. And I'm not really willing to do that. I don't like that dynamic. It makes me feel disconnected from you. And I don't want to have that in our relationship. There might be something that you could do. What is the worst thing that could happen if you spoke up for yourself? Well, sometimes the cost is way too high. Sometimes the person isn't going to be responsive, and maybe you have to move away from them or you have to do something else with boundaries. But sometimes it's a good practice for us to really look clearly at this and go, okay, what is the social risk here or financial risk? Maybe you need to get a different job, or maybe there's something else that you could do in the practical sense. What could you do? Maybe not confronting them, but maybe pulling back on the people pleasing. Would that feel safe? Let's explore what might open up for us if we were to take some time and really work with this pattern and see yourself doing that, whatever it is that's coming to mind. Let yourself feel that. There's nothing I can do about the external situation, but I could pull back on the people pleasing. Or maybe it's, I'm going to take a risk and say this. And then how does that feel in your body? Or maybe it's short term, I kind of need to keep fawning to this person because it's pretty dangerous. They could cost me my job or they're physically threatening, but I'm going to work longer term to make a change in what I could do there. Or maybe it's just I'm not going to shame myself anymore for this. What are some of the options that open up to us as we're looking at this? We don't fawn to people with less power, we fawn to people with more power. Some people really get into that. We feel like they're manipulative and they're always flattering and that kind of thing. But at the root of this, there's an attempt to keep ourselves safe because we feel threatened. And could we allow ourselves the humanity that that's what people do?